Trey Lance working out with Patrick Mahomes. God love Trey Lance. He seems like an earnest fella. He knows what he needs to work on. He works on it. But let's step back for a second. I mean, we want to be positive. He's doing the right things. But frankly, they drafted him 2 years ago. They sat him for a year. The reason they sat him for a year was because they knew they needed to change his throwing mechanics. And the idea was, why give him time to let those new mechanics get ingrained so he doesn't have to play and look wonky that first year. That was the plan. It didn't work. That second year, he was throwing like the first year. And now it's year 3, and I'm looking at stuff, and it's like, God love you, man. You're working your butt off, but it still looks the same to me. And I'm starting to wonder, I mean, it's really hard to change your throwing mechanics. Is all this stuff in vain? Is he just never going to be that high-level thrower? Or are you encouraged?
It's cool that he's working out, right? I mean, that's the one thing you can say about Trey Lance is that Trey Lance works out like crazy. Whoever his business partners are, they do a great piping him up, because this is every year since he got drafted, his workouts have been something that's been put out there on the regular, even before the draft. And so, you see it out, but it's good that he's working. I mean, and I agree with you. I've seen the tweets about, look how much tighter his throwing motion is. I'm sorry, I don't see it. I don't see it at all. The only thing that I see different.
I'm looking at his lower legs. His lower body, and I see the same thing. Yeah.
I do too. I see the same thing in the lower body. The only thing that I notice is different is that instead of holding the ball here, he's holding it down a little bit lower, but he's still bringing it up to the same point before he throws it. The coach that he's working with basically came out and said, "You're wrong. We haven't worked on tightening up his throwing motion. We're working on his legs and getting the full extension on the yeah." And so, it is what it is. And the whole thing with Trey and where he's going is he needs to be consistent. He needs to be able to show that he can hit targets over and over and over again.
Right.
And so if he comes out and he's able to do that this year, that's great. But he hasn't shown it yet. And from what we've seen on the film, the few throws that we've seen, I think we've seen like 5 throws. One of them was behind the guy. It wasn't even on target. It was still not a good throw. So we'll find out. Trey Lance is the next thing with Trey Lance, if he's still with the 49ers, is going to be OTAs in training camp. And can he do the job can he beat out Sam Darnold? Can he beat out Brock Purdy? And, it's positive to me that he's working. It's positive that he's working with Patrick Mahomes. But other than that, I'm kind of over the hype of it. It's show me what you can do. Don't just tell me how great it is. I want to see it, and I want to see it over and over and over again. Because that's what the 49ers
also, I think with him, he needs to focus more on the process than the results. Like, forget about training camp and competing with Sam Darnold, and like, you need to work on these mechanics. It's all about ingraining these mechanics down. Because if you come out and you're throwing the same way in camp, it doesn't really matter what your numbers are or what you do against Darnold. Like, it's not you're not going to work out. You need to improve this right now. Your whole career depends on it. So Absolutely. What his issue right now is his arm is providing the power and the accuracy. He needs to let his lower body provide the power, because until he does that, he's going to be scattershot as a thrower. Your arm is supposed to be along for the ride. It's guiding the ball. If you're also pushing the ball to create velocity and torque, like, you're never going to be a guy who completes 69, 70% of his throws. That's just the way it is. And the best throwers in the league have strong arms, but don't necessarily have to use it. They use their whole body, like Herbert, Allen, Mahomes. That's the way it is.
Yeah, I've heard what you've been saying about it, and I think you've been right on the money with everything you're saying. It's funny because you look at the video from the workout in Texas that he's doing now, where he throws the deeper ball. It's the 5-step, the hitch, and the throw, right? And you compare that to the throw that a similar drop and throw from his pro day. And what you're talking about is that front leg and that front knee being bent. If you look at the throw that he makes in the pro day, it's exactly what you're talking about. His left knee is bent. It looks exactly like what you're saying. And you compare that to where he is now, and it's actually gotten worse. So it's interesting, the whole process of Trey Lance here. And I agree with you. He needs to do better with his lower half, and that's going to drive the rest. That's what Kyle Shanahan says. How many times have we heard Kyle Shanahan talk about the feet driving everything? How many times did we hear Bill Walsh talk about how footwork drives everything with quarterbacks. And we all talk about the big arm, but the big arm comes from everything else.
And I don't know why he does it. Like, why are you throwing with that 2x4 up your crotch? Like, why are you slamming on the brakes with your lower body before your arm even gets to your ear? And it's like, I don't know. I played JV baseball growing up. I'm not a great athlete. I played 10 years of baseball, and I was so bad at baseball that my arm hurt a lot. And I remember when it was hurting, I was 14, 15, 16, and I was trying to stay on the team at O'Dowd. You would do things, you would start throwing with bad habits because you knew the pain was coming. And one thing you do is throw with throw crossfire. You step to third base, or you have that front leg extended because you're afraid it's going to hurt. You're afraid it's going to hurt. And I think subconsciously you're trying to slow your arm down, even though if you have a free and easy natural throw, it just whips right through and it doesn't hurt. So I don't know. Maybe he's talked about arm fatigue. Maybe there's been some soreness with him. He has a very violent motion. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we heard all that discussion last year, right? About the arm fatigue that he dealt with the first year, and everybody kind of just put it off and said it had to do with the hand or the finger, and maybe it had a little bit to do with that. But I think you're onto something there too. You watch him throw, and everything's a hard ball, right? He doesn't really throw a touch. I think that's the biggest difference between Lance and even a guy like Mahomes or a guy like Allen.
Mahomes throws a touch. Yeah.
Yeah, everything that Lance throws is coming out at the same speed, and it's like you said, it's violent, and that can definitely start to wear on you. I'm an old man, so it's different for me. I went out and was throwing the ball around with my son the other day because he's wanting to be a quarterback, and so we're out working on stuff. And I threw the ball around for 45 minutes, and my shoulder felt like it was going to fall off that night. Yeah. So and that was when I started to try to throw the ball hard. And again, I'm old though, so it's different for me. But the more violent you're throwing the ball, the more work that your body's going through.
Yes. I guess in retrospect, the Niners, I think they understood the issue with the throwing mechanics. I mean, they're not idiots. It's on film. I think they understood it. But in retrospect, year one, the quarterback coach was Rich Scangarello. How good is he? Was he even bought in? I mean, did he even know he was going to be working with Trey Lance until they drafted him? And then he's gone. Year two, Shane Day, new quarterback coach. You know, like, am I wrong? Did I get that right? There was like a new quarterback coach every year, right?
He had Scangarello,
and then he had Greasy, and then Greasy came in. He missed Shane Day.
Yeah, he missed Shane Day.
But it's like if quarterback mechanics mattered and the quarterback coach mattered, well, like they didn't really get that guy right away, Scangarello.
Yeah. And I don't think Scangarello knew based on like what you were saying earlier. I don't think anybody in the organization other than really probably Lynch and Shanahan knew who that pick was going to be. I think everybody else, they gave their input, but then when the pick was made, that's when they found out who it was.
Right. I'm sure Kyle eventually told Scangarello, hey, guess what? You're going to be coaching Trey Lance. And Scangarello was like, hey, you didn't want my input on this? You didn't think to ask me? Like, you could have asked me, hey, Rich, do you think you can fix Trey Lance's mechanics? I could have told you no. I could have said straight up no, but you didn't ask me. I mean, it feel like that kind of situation where he's like begrudgingly coaching someone and then he gets fired or whatever. And he's like, well, I was not part of this. No one asked me, Yeah.
You just threw him on top. You just threw him on me. I got stuck with
I thought we were going to work with Mac Jones. All of a sudden you give me Trey Lance. And it's like, look, for the Trey Lance thing to work with the Niners, you have to have the quarterback coach bought in, confident that he can do this because Kyle's not going to be the one coaching him on that stuff.
No, yeah, he doesn't. They don't have time, and even Scangarello to a certain extent doesn't have the time. That's what
true.
And Shanahan said this, which I think is when you talk about Lance and the 49ers thinking they're going to have to rebuild his throwing motion or what have you. Shanahan said this a couple of times where they don't have time to sit there and really do all that. That's for the guys to figure out when they're working with their own quarterback coach in the offseason. By the time they get in here, then it's just putting together the game plan, getting them the system input and those types of things. So the whole Lance experiment, I think, has been a tough one for the 49ers.
I mean, it just underscores that if you're going to take on a big project, you really got to be confident and go all in with it. And it seemed like from the initial press conference, the Niners never really showed that much confidence in their move. They always kind of acted like, boy, we got really drunk last night and did something that we regret. And we got a lot of tattoos and we can't really take this back, but we're gonna sort of sit here and act like it's all good, but really we got married last night and we got tattoos and we don't remember any of it. It's like the hangover. Like literally it's been a two-year hangover. What happened? That's been their attitude.
Yes, what you're saying is Shanahan showed up on Friday morning with the Tyson tattoo and tried to
absolutely
take it off real quick.
And just sitting there with a straight face at the press conference, like, yeah, this is what we wanted to do. This was the direction we wanted to go with my face. Tyson tattoo.